A loving mom, kidnapped and murdered.
Pause. What if toxic energy surfaced so that we could see it, feel it, confront it?
In her final moments, she may have saved her children's lives from her attacker, a killer who was once hailed as a hero.
Child did identify the suspect as Troy Savitz, and she says that he's a Pinellas deputy.
The item deputies say was at the center of a kidnapping nightmare that turned deadly. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Search the name Mandy Fackler online right now, and you'll see post after post on social media come up from people who are struggling to comprehend the loss of her life. People say she was a great mom, she was a great friend, she was someone who was there for everyone. And deputies say she had the motherly instinct to protect her children in her final moments. And those kids are heroes in this story as well.
Jealousy is stupid. It's literally hating someone because they have something that you want.
This is a video we found of Mandy on her social media. She loved to share life advice and videos like that. Mandy lived in Pasco County, Florida, gorgeous part of the state on the Gulf Coast. And this is her picture with her daughters. She loved her kids. She was a mom whose entire life seemed to revolve around her daughters. Here she is with one of her daughters getting ready, it seems, for like a dance competition. Then in another video, they're having a great time in the backyard. Those girls are now 9 and 12 years old. And what they witnessed on Monday night is hard to put into words. What they had to do as their mom's life was in danger is something that no child should ever have to do. Before I get to that point, I need to talk about the man who took Mandy's life. This is someone who wore the uniform of a protector, but in the end was anything but that. This is Troy Savitz, a 14-year veteran of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. His relationship with Mandy had come to an end. We did find some pictures that show him with her family. She didn't post a lot about him, it seems, though. You can see him here across the aisle in this picture as they're all on a plane. Now, we don't know much about what Savitz's life was like in recent years. We know that he was still active duty in Pinellas County, and it also appears that he was once hailed a hero for what he did more than a decade ago. We searched Savitz's name on the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office Facebook page, and there were multiple posts came up featuring him in his line of work. Here he is taking control of an alligator. And in 2015, he was honored for saving the life of a 24-year-old man who deputies say tried to jump off a bridge. He was honored at this banquet. Here he is at a news story about the incident that was posted on YouTube by local outlet IONTV.
Myself and several other deputies responded to the area, at which time we observed the subject standing on the railing.
For that act of heroism, he actually ended up throwing out the first pitch at the Tampa Bay Rays baseball game. These are pictures that PCSO posted on Facebook, and they wrote, quote, "We're proud of Deputy Savitz. Thank you for being an exemplary public servant." And yet, more than a decade later, that deputy, who was hailed a hero for protecting his community, became a killer who people in his line of work try to stop. Deputies say on Monday night around 5:30, Mandy and her two daughters were coming back to their home after a day at the beach. And when they got home, Deputy Troy Savitz was there waiting for them.
They see the victim's ex-boyfriend, who was identified as Troy Savitz. He was standing in their yard in Hudson. Troy Savitz and the victim start arguing. Supposedly Troy wants his TV back. There was some dispute over some of his materials. The victim then turns to her children. Actually, she first tries to call 911. At some point, Troy takes the phone out of her hand, so she is unable to call 911. The victim then tells her children to go inside to call 911, which they do.
That's the Pasco County Sheriff updating the media after this terrible situation came to an end, per Fox 13 Tampa Bay.
The child calls 911, working with dispatch, and I will say, when you listen to that call, and I'll get a little bit further in that call, talk about it, but the dispatcher and the child did a phenomenal job. The child was absolutely extremely brave in what she did and what she said and the information she gave. During that time, the child did identify the suspect as Troy Savitz, and she says that he's a Pinellas deputy. The Pasco deputies arrive on scene. We clear the house. We're not sure where the victim is at this point or the suspect, but we clear the house and we secure the two children.
The sheriff says that Savitz kidnapped Mandy and put her in a rental car and sped off. Law enforcement in multiple counties started searching in hopes they would find Mandy before it was too late. And sadly, around 7 o'clock that night, this is what they found.
A ping comes back to an area, Platinum Drive, where one of our deputies sees the vehicle. They see the vehicle, and at that point, we fly a drone. We're able to identify there was 2 bodies in the car. Our teams approach safely because we're not sure. We know the suspect's armed, but we're not sure exactly if he's still alive or not. But then we identify that he and the victim are deceased. This is around 7 o'clock at night. Information comes out later that there was a person that had seen him, the suspect, driving down the street. They actually gave each other a thumbs up at some point. And then shortly after that, where the suspect took his own life, we're not sure when and at what point this suspect had killed the victim.
Now, here is what Savitz's boss, the Pinellas County Sheriff, had to say at that news conference about what was at the center, potentially, of this deadly confrontation.
Yeah, and the argument is, they know, I mean, this is so stupid. And from what we know from our people, they've had this on again, off again, tumultuous relationship. But he's there because he wanted his TV set back. I mean, this is an argument over a TV set. Obviously, it's deeper than that. But for that to spark him to decide that he is going to take his gun, kidnap her, shoot her and kill her, and have her kids experience that over whatever relationship issues, and the spark was a TV set, it's just horrible.
Law enforcement says that Mandy's 2 daughters are now with their biological dad. It doesn't appear that Savitz was trying to harm the children, according to law enforcement, but there's no doubt he put them in harm's way. A powerful moment in this news conference was this message that the Pasco County Sheriff had for those 2 girls who will now grow up without their mom, a mom who loved them so much.
There's going to be a point in your life where you're going to go back and listen to all the videos and read all the reports and everything that happened. So please hear this directly from us. We listened to that 911 tape, and we know that your mother said to go inside to save your lives and to call 911. You did exactly what your mom asked you to do. So know this, your mom is looking down from heaven, and she's so proud of you too, because she did exactly what any parent would have wanted her children to do, and that's to save their own lives and be safe. So know that. You 2 did the right thing. You did exactly what your mom wanted you to do. And she's so proud of you for what you did. When I heard that video and the sheriff heard that audio, we were all amazed at how brave you both were. We were amazed at, the calmness that you were under and the information you were able to provide us so we can get there as quick as possible. So we're so proud of you, and I know your mom is. But know that this entire community is praying for you. Our arms go around you, and we're going to do everything we can because, we know you're going to be going back to school, and we're going to make sure that the resources are there for you.
Now, before I bring in Dr. Debbie Goodman, I do want to share this, a couple very important resources that we always want to make sure you know about. First off, the crisis number to call, 988. If you or someone you know is in crisis, call that number. It is staffed 24 hours a day. And also, this is the domestic violence hotline at 1-800-799-7233. You can go there or to thehotline.org. You can remain anonymous. And again, that is staffed 24/7, 365. Joining us now to unpack this case is Dr. Debbie Goodman, a criminologist. Dr. Debbie, always great to have you here on Law and Crime. I feel like recently we have seen so many of these cases. People will remember the family in Michigan. I think it was last week or the week prior. A husband killing his 6 kids and his wife and then himself. In this case, you have this deputy who, was in, according to law enforcement, a tumultuous relationship with Mandy. But, at the end of the day, he truly acts like, I just keep thinking, like, how can a police officer do something like this? Especially someone of 14 years. I mean, truly a monster to do this in front of children. Take us into the mind of people in these cases. They may not have a criminal record. In his case, Deputy Savitz, was, according to law enforcement, this exemplary member of law enforcement. And then suddenly he's doing this. I don't know what was going on in his life, but, take us into the mind of people who in these moments do these things.
Certainly. Well, pleasure to join you, Chris. And what a horrendous, horrible case we have here. And may I please express my condolences to the families, because on both sides of the coin, they're decedents. And when we talk about mental health, we understand how far-reaching it is. But you're absolutely right. When we take a look at the configuration here of Deputy Savitz, and somebody whose life is really prompted on the public service. That's what local, state, and federal officers do. They help others, especially in times of trauma. And yet, look at the irony of the trauma that he himself must have been going through to make this horrendous, fatal decision. So I know when we are talking about killers, we do think about individuals such as a Koberger or a Huerman, and just the devastation and despair. But yet, Chris, we need to understand and recognize that even among neighbors, even those who are professionals, we simply just don't know what burdens are they carrying, how fragile is their mental health. And, I have a theory that I've created as a criminologist, jar theory. And I wonder if that's potentially, relevant to this case: jealousy, anger, revenge. Certainly, there's some level of anger, obviously deeply rooted. He took the revenge against his victim, but was there a jealousy component? More to come, of course, but absolutely horrendous. The victimology also, by the way, so far reaching, because it's not just the victims as defendant, as they've lost their lives, and how sad for the little boys who are now to grow up, and the children, and then other local, state, and federal officers, communities. So there's really a lot to unpack here.
There really is. And I think of the moment where all of this transpired Monday night, and police say that Mandy's coming back with her daughters to their house. They're at the beach, and there's Troy. And this relationship was over. Apparently, they might have been living together to some extent. He wanted his television back. And I know this is about more than just the TV. But, in these moments that then escalate to something as horrific as what we're talking about, like it wasn't just the TV, but the TV had something to do with it. Like these moments, like, what do you see as kind of the deeper meaning of all of it?
Well, I think the deeper meaning is that the mental health in some individuals is so deeply rooted. And I think the TV was really just the tipping point. But thank goodness, as a mom and as a protector, she knew to protect her daughters and make sure that they went into the home for safety, survival, and ultimately security of their lives. But I think when individuals make a decision, here's the part we don't know. Had he been thinking about this because their relationship was so tumultuous? Was this really just a knee-jerk reaction because of the dispute over the television? Or did he really come there with some, deeper, darker intent, which ultimately became a kidnap and a murder? And the suicide rates, as you know, Chris, we've seen an uptick. We've seen the upticks also, according to CDC, our Center for Disease Control, and WHO, and overall intimate partner homicide. And, I check the data every day as a criminologist, and what we know in 2024 is that of all of the homicides that took place, 20% of which involved intimate partner homicides. So it's really worthy of our attention and discussion.
Absolutely. And you look at this relationship, and tumultuous was the term that the sheriff used to describe it. In a lot of these cases, we'll hear it. It was a toxic relationship. And one thing that always stands out to me on these is, there are the good times, and then there's the bad times. And then eventually, like, it just gets to this point where, and you don't, I think it's hard to comprehend how it gets to the point of like what we're hearing, where like he would do this in front of 9 and 12-year-olds, and then here's their mom screaming for them to go call 911, and he's the guy who wears the uniform that's supposed to be the person protecting us against people that he ended up being. It's just so hard to fathom. But when you look at relationships and then you see crimes like this, like, as a criminologist, what are some of the, I guess, consistencies you see in these stories of how a relationship goes and then gets to the point where there is this intimate partner violence?
Right. Well, again, we would understand, and certainly all of us in relationships recognize that it may just not be perfect, but there really is a distinct difference with imperfections that exist in relationships, and there tends to be the consistency and the continuity of which would include the arguments and, curse words, if you will, and slamming of things and breaking of things. And then, unfortunately, the progression, of course, is that the verbal becomes the physical, and then the apologies, and then back to gift giving and trying to right the wrong. So it really is this pendulum, Chris, that swings in both directions until a decision is made where literally, the enough is enough and it's got to stop. And sometimes that means getting authorities involved and actually documenting these circumstances with police. And now we hit the pause button and put the asterisk. But what happens when the police, right, is the aggressor or is involved in the violence? So it's really a delicate line, but certainly there's no blame at all on victims. We understand the enormity of emotions, and when people love deeply, meaning potentially Deputy Savitz, there's also that line of forensic psychology whereby they can hate deeply. And when we have the height of emotions and individuals are literally spiraling and unraveling, then it's when the unthinkable happens. And this is just beyond anybody's, belief that this is what happened in a nice community. This wonderful mother of daughters, the deputy himself was somebody respected and appreciated by others in the community until, and the sheriff said it, once these actions are taken, the deputy title and hat, if you will, gets removed. And now this is a vicious, violent criminal to have done this.
Right. And I think that's the way he needs to be remembered, because to do this in front of, two girls, and at any point in time, he could have turned around, he could have stopped it. It's interesting. They pointed out that he was in a rental car, and I don't know what that means. I don't know if he was on hard times, or like a car was in the shop, or if there was something more to it, that this wasn't a, hey, I'm here to get my television. Oh, all these angry feelings have come back. And then it escalates. I'm in a situation I can't get out of. And then sadly, it ends up this way. Or if it was something more. What did you make of that part of the story? The fact that they would just point that out, is there anything to read into there?
I think potentially there is. Everything, as far as I'm concerned, has a message and a meaning. Now, again, will we ever know? I think it is possible that he shows up in the rental car, perhaps because then it wouldn't be something, let's say, glaring to neighbors or to our victim and or the daughters. So again, the part that we don't know, and maybe it's to be forthcoming as the investigation continues, but did he really intend for this to happen? He would have known. The sheriff even said what a glorious day was had by the little girls and the mom, and they spent the day at the beach and such a wonderful time together, to go from, the dream, if you will, to now the nightmare. So I think potentially the rent-a-car may have almost been part of a disguise, certainly not showing up in the deputy cruiser, nor necessarily showing up in his own vehicle.
Yeah, it's interesting. And we'll see, what other pieces of information come out on this, from his personnel file. Were there any red flags as far as his mental health and the way that he was acting? Certainly very different from the person in, I think it was 2014, 2015. He ends up in, and irony is such a hard word to use in this story, but it is one where he once stopped someone from taking their own life off of a bridge. And then here we are a decade later, and that hero is so far in the past with what he ended up doing. I'm also something I think about with this relationship, because with the sheriff calling it a tumultuous one, it had this back and forth. We'll never know the full details of it, but we certainly know enough that it wasn't good. It appears that Mandy got out. Mandy did the thing that so many people who are victims of intimate partner violence, and not victim blaming, but they just stay in and hope things are for the better. It appears that she got out because he was coming back for his television. And yet, what really could have protected her from Deputy Savitz? And I'm not saying deputy because he ends up, that it was law enforcement that, prevented her from having protection. I'm just saying he was still out there. Like, and in these cases, like, how often do you see it that it's not the person that's stuck in the relationship, it's actually the person that did the courageous thing to get out, and yet still they can't find that protection in the end?
Right, that's really a great point to raise. And we do know, Chris, that in these moments, it's almost like the pathway, the journey of the relationship, the starting point, the point where it's, getting tumultuous, and then the courage. You see, I hope and I would think that people will remember Mandy as being a very courageous woman, a protector of her daughters. But we do know statistically and sadly, tragically, that sometimes it is toward the end of the relationship that the greatest amount of violence is to ensue. And we see that here. But, again, we don't want to victim blame because she did the right thing. But we need to make sure that viewers are very aware of different resources as well. The whole idea of suicide, right? We have a national hotline, 988, and we would hope that if anybody's in the midst of any type of self-inflicting thoughts, that they would get help, or if they know others. And then we also have, Chris, as you know, the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So that too is critically important. 1-800-799 and the letter SAFE, SAFE, and that translates to 7233. And again, these are the resources available so that others can be courageous and make these difficult decisions, yet ultimately, we would hope, a life-saving decision.
Yeah. And, in this case, she certainly got her children out of the way of danger, from Deputy Savitz when he showed up, and things escalated to just such a terrible and deadly level. Dr. Debbie, always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Chris. My pleasure.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.